I agree with what you were saying earlier. I really think this should not be positioned. I'm not talking India context. It should not be positioned only for school children. It should be, across the board. It can go to universities. It can go to college. It can go to graduates. What I'd like to do is I'd like to, share 3 anecdotes and, draw my inference of the relevance of the book from there. The first one goes back to 2017. There was an ORF arranged roundtable on India-Africa Partnership for Sustainable Development. And a very smart young Kenyan woman started with her opening remarks, which have stuck with me for many years. She said that partnership is like gender, oft spoken of, but rarely practiced. And that's very true of climate. In these years, climate has now impacted all of us. So it's spoken. Frankly, it's spoken too much in social media. And I see 2 extremes. On one extreme, you have people bemoaning the problems, but without any actionable solutions. On the other hand, you have people who are eulogizing science, which is in a lab. And you and I know it takes 6-7 years to get a science from a lab to a commercialized product. So it's important that we have a different pathway. And why I'm very concerned is people are brainwashed with hype and hyperbole, particularly in this digital world. So there's a tendency for people to say, oh, we can leapfrog into green economy and we're not doing it because of the evil energy companies or because of inept or corrupt political leaders. That's not so. What we need to do is to demystify climate change, to get citizenry at large to adopt green practices that can be easily adopted. So what I'm seeing from this book is this can be shared in a larger platform, getting climate change demystified. The second anecdote goes to COP25 Madrid. 2.5 months before that, Greta Thunberg, she went to New York in a yacht. She went to the UN, invited to UN Climate Action Summit, wagged her fingers at leaders of nations and exclaimed, "How dare you?" So in Madrid, most panelists kind of felt politically obliged to take reference to Greta and use that as a context. I did not. My learning of life is that wagging fingers like pontification may silence the listeners, but it doesn't lead to cooperation. Second thing is, tokenism actually is misused by powers who be. The optics are so wonderful. They allow the optics to fly around for a few days, few weeks, and get along doing what they want to do, business as usual. So what is really need is for collective responsibility and collaboration. Now, when I talk collective responsibility and collaboration at a rural level, it's not necessarily only a child. It can be an old farmer. It can be a mother of 2 with grandchildren. So this book can have a role to play in that. And it doesn't pretend to be an oracle, but it is giving pathways on how things can be implemented. The third anecdote is COP26 classical. There's no doubt that India had the climate leadership in the first week. We were the only G20 nation to be on track for NDCs. We are amongst the few, I don't know whether there's anyone else, who really quantified NDCs with enhanced ambition as much as India did. I've written 6 articles on that because it's a big matter of deep concern. But the Prime Minister stuck his neck out and stuck India's commitment. Then net zero by 2070 is not a joke at all. And the PM's clarion call for lifestyle for environment. So we really had the praise in the first week. But at the end, when the report was being written, and very correctly the Indian stand was that we cannot use the word phase down or phase out of coal, but it should be phased down. The Western media went hyper about pulling down India. Now, what happened 4 months later? Russian sanctions, and you suddenly have the EU president very sanctimoniously saying EU is committed to phase out Russian fossil. Whatever does Russian fossil mean? They have restarted coal. Germany and UK in March have even spoken of new coal-fired power plants. And I think the brilliance of rationalization for oil, the ban applies for oil coming on ships, not for pipelines. And of course, no mention of gas. So the important point out here is we have to be grounded in reality. Now, I'm not criticizing EU. I mean, EU has really been the one geography which has invested billions of euros in trying to create an ecosystem. But what has happened? They are not ready. In spite of trying to say that, oh, we can move on to net zero, etc., they're not ready. So we have to be grounded in reality. There's no point only celebrating future science or announce targets. I'm more than happy to discuss with anybody in absolute detailed specifics on the potential of any science because I've devoted my years for that. But I'm saying what is required now is actionable ideas for today. And this is what I think the book does. So whether it is students, whether it is rural areas, or maybe when we talk with an RWAs, this book has a fairly large, wide appeal. I agree with you. Let me comment. I think we must understand what India we're talking of. 1.25 billion are below $3 a day. Okay, that's 7,000 rupees a month. Even if it's two income, that means our maids, our drivers, and our gardeners are the haves of this country. So among this upper group, like what you're talking, is like my granddaughter. She's in Shivnada School, Gurgaon. She has chosen to migrate from ICSE to IGBC, which is the Cambridge curriculum. In 9th standard, she has a subject environment. And that book on environment covers air pollution, water pollution, agriculture, forestry, biodiversity. So there is one sector. I mean, earlier DPS was spoken of. I mean, Niranjan knows DPS people well, etc. So fine. So that is one sector. I'm only trying to make a case about drawing from, let's keep politics out. But I think PM Narendra Modi's call of lifestyle for environment makes a lot of sense. And this is what either in the BRICS Energy Green Economy Working Group or the Climate Change Committee I chair or Skills Counter Green Job, we are definitely trying to see how we propagate this. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change had come out with, let me say, two small, 8 or 10 pages kind of, I don't know what to call it, as a note or a flyer or something. One is climate-friendly lifestyles in India. The other is low-carbon lifestyles. And they've actually gone back to ancient times to show as to how India lived in a very sustainable manner. So I'm trying to see as to how this book can be dovetailed into these kind of things. Now, suppose we do something in rural India, I don't think we should limit ourselves to a high school student in rural India. If we widen the ambit, we can get RDPR involved. It's a question of what the community needs. So, sure. And let me tell you, when you talk of water, when you talk of waste, and you talk of energy, the impact on rural households is savage. So one is to embed for the future. The other is getting actionable today. Can I make a statement out here? Sure. The businesses have very minuscule influence on policy as much as that 1.25 billion people. It's the 1.25 billion people who vote. Okay. The big businesses don't even vote. The big businesses are making the money. In India, it is really the top 1%. It's pathetic. Okay. My family belongs to that. I feel sad about it. You leave the 5% of India. So what I'm trying to say is if we decide how we are going to structure this book, it can be navigated through RDPR. It can be navigated. We had a lot of debate on this. I was also a chair in the Rural Business Hub. Instead of treating the district as a unit, to treat the block as a unit. That means start at the taluka level, not at the Grama Panchayat level, but start at the taluka level. It's of a reasonable size.
Okay.
I think if you start working with administrative mechanisms of panchayats, their local leaders, and no harm if an MLA or a MP or a minister wants to chat, like Hari's talking to a minister, you know. So absolutely no harm, because at the end of the day, they also want to do community good.
Sure.
And one important thing, I think, after I have had this experience 20 years ago before smartphones, but post smartphones, believe me, it's it's these people's concerns are there, and there's a way of reaching out.